Hello wonderful people, Connor Whitmore here again with another video for you on the Nawtystep channel, and it's time for the third video of Yearly Favourites Week 2020 as I bring you my top 20 bass albums of their year. First off again here the rules. Now I'm not deciding for myself what constitutes as an album and what doesn't. I'm just going to go off what the artist or musician calls it, and when it comes to labels, I'm including anything here that is 8 tracks or over. One album per artist. However, I am allowing multiple compilations from any given label for this list right here, and yeah, when it gets to it, I'll explain. In this video, going up from 20 to number 1, the honourable mentions beforehand again to kind of kick things off. Just 10 here though, not as many as the main list, which is different to what we had with the remixes and EPs, and it'll be the same with the singles as well, because quite frankly there just weren't that many great bass albums, and there never are. And again, just quickly, this is solely one opinion, my opinion, not giving any definitive or objective views here, simply my personal picks of 2020, and I'm excited to hear what your favourite bass albums are of the year, so drop them in the comments down below. Let's get the discussion going. But yeah, here we go, the honourable mentions for the best bass albums of 2020. Again, just 10 here, so won't take long at all, but listed in alphabetical order by way of artist or label name. And yeah, see you very, very shortly. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and moving on towards the main list now, and kicking it off at number 20, we have Rigto with Unseen, Untold, Forgotten. Definitely the most abstract album experience I had all year, bar none. Not one I've gone back to for individual tracks or even moments, I wouldn't say. More for the immersiveness of it, the carefulness with which it's handled and crafted, if you get me. I love the dramatic appeal of it, all the while feeling very close and intimate and textured, which is quite an interesting contrast, I would say, as a kind of combination of approaches and whatnot. But yeah, it's odd, but there to be loved, and I do enjoy it a lot. At number 19, we have the Sentinel compilation from Meth Lab, which is one of the best projects they ever brought us, and one of the last ones they ever brought us as well, and undoubtedly one of the best compilations I heard all year. Such a fantastic range of industrial-leaning music here, from your D&B to experimental, your halftime, your glitchy stuff as well, and yeah, it's just a massive shame really that the imprint is no longer here, and it's thanks to compilations like this one that we will remember it fondly. You know, they are sorely missed. Number 18, another massive compilation here from Vision, Mission 01, which came out a couple of months ago, and yeah, just what you'd expect really. A load of intense D&B and halftime delivery. Not massively dissimilar actually from the Meth Lab in terms of approach, I would have to say. A big chunk of it I'm not that big on at all. Could have done with being a bit shorter to make for a more cohesive listen overall, I would say. But great to get so many involved, and the good we do get is pretty fantastic. So yeah, if you haven't checked it yet, then check it. At number 17, we have Interval Audio with Elan Vital Season 4. And, you know, people rave a lot about the Without God and Normal Interval series, but Elan Vital just operates so well under the radar. You know, the concept being here for producers to create something a bit weird and different outside their comfort zone, and this one is my favourite of them yet. Some fantastic ideas here. The variation across it is pretty sensational, and the production level is good. It's just so unique and fun as well, and it's compilations like this one, like these, sorry, that make me love Interval like no other label, and I'm being completely genuine in saying that, honestly. Really, really good. At number 16, we have No Other Boy with Forlorn Hope. And yeah, just No Other Boy in a nutshell, quite frankly. An album of moments as opposed to whole tracks, I would say. But I suppose that's the point, you know, it's conceptual as opposed to being just a banger album, if you get me. Kind of like a machine laying dormant and then bursting into life sporadically in these very attention-grabbing ways. and yeah, those moments really do take you aback quite a bit. A big old blend of down-tempo and glitch and halftime. The production is sharp and a nice mix of moods on show here as well. And, you know, it has its meh moments for sure, but the good stuff is really good. Then another compilation at number 15, we have Alliance Volume 6 by Disciple. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a fair amount here that just doesn't work at all for me. You know, tunes that really don't add anything, either, well, both to the compilation and just to the scene overall. But when I look back over the track list, there's a pretty solid amount of quality material here. And, you know, for one, we have The Barely Alive and Fox Stevenson and Murder, which are great in my opinion. And then you also have ones like The Eliminate, The Oliverse, The Dirty Phonics, E-Craze, Chibs, and a couple more here and there that have just great elements to them. And, you know, not an incredible compilation by any means, but there's certainly enough good for it to place here. At number 14, we have Bleach by Rohan, which is a collection that definitely treads the line between being an EP and an album at 25 minutes long and 7 tracks, but he called it an album, so, you know, that's what we're going to go with. And to be honest, I would say that it definitely has an album feel, in spite of it being quite short, such as the closeness and realness of the music here. And by that I mean that it isn't so much a collection of outright bangers as rooted in feeling and emotion. And, you know, it just feels like it's really come from somewhere, you know, like a kind of past experience, if you get me, which isn't lost throughout the whole thing, even though it is essentially heavy music. So yeah, I find that rare, it's quite unique in that way, and I love it for that. At number 13, we have Code Pandorum with Art of the Devil, the 4th LP under the Code Pandorum moniker, I think, and perhaps the most important yet, in terms of making his sound properly accessible, if you get me. You know, a sense of story here that really lures you in, and brilliant vocal features, and a good amount of eerie as fuck death step from the man himself, Code Pandorum. You know, it could have had a bit more genre variety, but he does keep it pretty impressively diverse with the death step ideas that we get here, and it's one that's grown on me a decent amount over the course of the year. At number 12, we have Milan Away, the best remix compilation I heard all year, and yeah, there wasn't another that came even remotely close on that front, and that is Temp Remixed by Tech Genesis. And yeah, I prefer the first 4 here to the second 4, you know, first half to second half, but there isn't an overtly bad tune here, in my opinion. They're all really solid in completely different ways. A great range of styles on show here, but all kinda within the industrial D&B and halftime kind of range, and a load of memorable ideas from drops to introductions, mid-sections of the lot, and a timeless kind of appeal to it as well. Just very enjoyable. After that, number 11, we have Mousetrap and Insomniac with Volume 2. Another one that's grown on me a lot. You know, originally I found it quite meh, but now I find it very compelling. A hefty mix of house and techno. Again, with a wide range of different approaches to those genres on display. And, you know, got stuff which is a bit more drawn out and anthem-like in feel than stuff which is more fun and bubbly and easygoing, and seemingly everything in between. You know, some really catchy ideas as well throughout to go with that. So yeah, just another very solid compilation. Now we're in the top 10, and kicking that off, we have the debut Halcyon release, Halcyon Sound Volume 1. A pretty statement-making way, I think, to introduce everyone to the imprint. But, you know, I have to admit, there have never been that many tunes here that I love outright. Of the 8, I think only a couple I've gone back to repeatedly, but the futuristic gleam of the project as a whole has had me going back to the compilation a few times from start to finish, which is more than I can say for pretty much every other compilation I've heard this year. Even though a large chunk of the ideas and production don't necessarily wow me, there's just a particular class to the approach here that you can't really, you know, tear yourself away from, if you get me. And yeah, you just don't find that approach very much elsewhere. And I'm excited for Volume 2 for that reason alone. And, you know, in my opinion, my personal opinion, 2020, they've taken a little bit of a while to kind of get going with the ideas, Halcyon, but trust me, 2021 will be huge for this label. At number 9, another compilation, one that came out only a couple of weeks ago, which is a sign of just how big an impact it's made, in that space of time that it places here, and that is Black Ops XL3 by Never Say Die Black Label. Some genuinely fantastic dubstep on this compilation. You know, this isn't your run-of-the-mill rhythm in any way. A lot of exciting material on show here. Some that really don't work for me at all, but they're far in the minority, and I suppose you're going to get that with every compilation that you hear. You know, most of them are pretty brilliant in one way or another, and just very fitting, I think, for it to have Achios as the central figure, the most consistent in the rhythm sphere at the moment for me, and yeah, just having them as the kind of driving force of the compilation, at the focal point, you know, with the most tracks here as well. No fucking wonder that it sounds good. At number 8, we have another Disciple compilation, which I'm including here because the people involved don't cross over in any way. And so, yeah, it felt wrong to kind of leave one of them out, and it was a good way of including them both by saying, yeah, same label, but the artists involved are completely different. And that is, of course, Afterlife of Volume 1. One that I enjoy just a little bit more than the Black Label, out a couple of weeks more, so a bit more time to kind of get used to it, but also built upon true melodic flavour, which I think dubstep has been missing and severely lacking for a couple of years now, and which we get in droves here. You know, a range of styles as well, not just strict melodic dubstep, and some of these ideas are fucking fantastic. You know, elite level stuff. The life and colour running through this thing is enough to completely flip a bad day that you're having on its head. It's just so pure and genuine and rich, and again, that thing of the good definitely outweighing the not so good, and more than that, the good is so good that it just has to place here in amidst all of these normal albums, you know, no lower at all, and on the whole, completely top drawer and my compilation of the year. At number 7, we have probably the most experimental of the bunch here, down-tempo music with a distinct tribal essence running through the whole thing, and yeah, it is a very interesting LP, and that is Fight 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 by Two Fingers, which has a really good range of electronic instrumentation on show, giving the album multiple different moods and avenues of appreciation, even though at its core it's all quite down and dirty and gritty and, you know, that kind of thing. Some of the tracks here being absolutely brilliant, you know, the first 4 or so in particular, which get the LP off to an amazing start, but also provide its main downfall in a way, in that it never quite reaches those heights following that. But still, the remainder is solid, you know, a couple more towards the end, which are good, but just without the star quality of the first few. But yeah, definitely backs it up well, and just an amazing earthy groove to the album that I like a lot, and will keep me going back to it in the years to come. At number 6, now, sometimes all you need is one massive dose of super hard-hitting, atmospheric, wub-driven halftime kind of music, you know, the type of collection that'll just swallow you whole and spit you back out continually and leave you gasping for breath at the end. And that album is Split by Seppa. A perfect example for me of the wonders of giving as much music as you can a second chance. First time listening through, I wasn't that enthralled, but the second and every one after that, I've just become more and more gripped. Kind of like a book revealing one twist after another. You know, for me, it lacks a certain character at points that the ones in front of it here have. A little vocal or melody here and there to make some of the ideas a bit more memorable, I think would have been nice, but I suppose in a way that isn't really the point, and you know, ultimately here we get a selection of really rounded and riveting cuts. You know, production here is just next level, you know, sonically insane, and bits of jazz and D&B and experimental dropped in as well. It just packs such a fucking big punch, I can't even really put it into words. Like, I imagine a few of you haven't heard it, so yeah, check it out. Can't recommend enough. Coming in at number 5. Now, very easy to forget, I think, that bass music can be overtly poppy, you know, pop influenced, and have more of a commercial appeal to it, veering away from the outright heaviness to make something a bit more, or far more, accessible and catchy, whether that be through vocals or instrumentals or both. And that is exactly what we get on Butterfly Effect by Coven. This album has grown on me so much. I've basically come to realise over the course of the year the extent to which this has a real album feel, the character emanating from it, the range of approaches we get from D&B to dubstep to pop house, chill step, straight up balladry, exceptional vocal performances from Katie, whose voice has such an amazing reach and kind of hunger to it. Also vulnerable to give it a more reflective side that can't be played down every now and then. And yeah, a couple of tracks here that are a bit more forgettable and I think could have been chalked off to make for a more cohesive listen. But the good far, far outweighs the not so good here. And I just love the attitude of the whole thing. And whether through instrumental or vocal, they're all memorable in some way. You know, all 14 tunes here are pretty impressive in some way. And it's just a big meld of emotions. We get aggressive stuff, sad stuff, songs to make you hopeful, songs to make you chill out a bit. It's just, there's so much going on, and most of it, pretty much all of it I would say, is good. It's just a really solid pop-bass record. Following on from there, number 4. An album that many people waited and waited and waited for, myself included to an extent, you know, not quite impatient, which I think a lot of people were. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I got quite to that level, but yeah, I was waiting for it. One that many regarded as the most hyped and anticipated bass album in recent memory, and one that delivered in a lot of important ways. And that album is Brave by Joyride. Now again, I have to be honest, for me, Brave is another album that lays clear or bare the unfortunate reality of kicking off with a bang. The opening 4 or 5 here constitute as a thrilling opening, and you're kind of left thinking, damn, a whole album of this, like, are you joking? This is incredible. But yeah, that isn't what we quite get. I mean, there are other fantastic cuts kind of dropped in later on here, but as well as that, a lot of filler, you know, songs that slow the album down quite a bit, stopping it from being number 1 or 2 here. That being said, there's still loads of good on and about Brave, and that's why it places here as opposed to considerably lower. The introductory skit at the beginning is one of the best bass album introductions I've ever heard, and the few tracks following that, as I mentioned, make for a blistering start. The production is mad good across the whole thing, punchy, crisp, clean, defined, with a lot going on, so very accomplished in that regard. The orchestral or classical theme laced through the whole thing adds another dimension to the album that just goes far beyond the hype, and the highlights here are just pretty fucking sensational. From I'm Gone to On Fire, you have Brooklyn, Fail Me, 4am, couple others here and there, but for me those are the main ones, and it's just got that Joyride vibe and feel rubbed into it, you know, kind of massaged into it, which has kept me coming back to it again and again. Not the knockout LP that many hoped for, myself included. Could have had it shorter, again like the Coven, could have chalked off quite a few, but it's still so great hearing his style over the stretch of an album, and one that I can imagine I'll enjoy more as the years go by. Coming in at number 3, the D&B LPs just keep coming in this list, and here we have another, one of the best produced albums I've heard all year, and which has a wealth of captivating ideas on display without ever going overboard with them. And that LP is Ex Machina by Metric. But simply, a really well-crafted collection right here. The production, which I just touched on, providing a really solid base from which all the ideas can operate. A lot of them not particularly complex, I wouldn't say, but that really works for letting the production do its thing, and that's what makes it such an impressive LP, in my opinion. The vocals we get throughout lend a real charm and allure to it. Definite pendulum vibes coming off the whole thing. Not all straight up heavy either, you know, got some dreamier takes on his style, dropped in and just littered in as well. Like the Joyride before as well, you know, the good we get here is just really, really good. And it doesn't really put that many feet wrong, if I'm being honest. You know, sometimes doesn't go quite far enough with the ideas, doesn't push quite far enough, but importantly, as I mentioned, it never goes overboard, never does too much. I wouldn't say there's an extensive period here either, you know, more than one tune where it gets boring in any way. It's, you know, remarkable in flashes, but more than that, solid from front to back, and that's what gives an album re-listen factor. It's just a definite top 3 here, no doubt. Okay, at number 2 now, yet another predominantly D&B album that's grown on me massively over the last few months or so, albeit a different kind of D&B altogether, I would say. You know, less of the mainstream kind and more of a classic and old school feel to it. One that takes me right back to my own days of hearing the genre for the first time. And that album is Portals by Subfocus and Wilkinson. Now, making an individual album is one thing, getting together a wealth of wildly different ideas over the course of years and forming them into tracks and ordering those tracks into something cohesive, hopefully with a kind of story and development beneath it. But making a collab album is another thing altogether. You know, all of that, which I just mentioned, but letting go of ideas that you might like and they don't, and adapting to their way of working. All of that considered, this album is pretty fucking insane. We get the vintage production, some of the best vocals I've heard all year, perfectly matching the instrumentals they go on top of, and those instrumentals being a perfect example of very simple but very effective, and just really varied as well within the D&B format. Not forgetting, of course, the breakbeat and house experimentation we get as well. You know, some ideas I think could have pushed a little bit further, don't bring that much new to the LP, and do just drag a little bit. But the good here, again, is genuinely incredible, and here, especially, I just cannot say that enough, or mean that enough. I really mean that with all my heart. Bringing me right back to the very first time that I was getting into this kind of music, which is just the highest compliment I can pay it, quite frankly. It just has that iconic feel, all the while executed with an effortlessness that just oozes class from the very first tune. It's just so good. But coming in at number 1, my favourite bass album of 2020. Now, it wasn't too hard at deciding this spot, because this one, as a combination of ideas, production, consistency, is head and shoulders above the rest in bass music, in my opinion. A lot of the good I've said about the albums just before here, and the less good about them that could be better, I feel like this album just combines all of that into one. Easily the most enjoyable bass album of the year for me, and that is Planetsmad by Bauer. As I've listened to it again and again, I've acknowledged that this album pretty much has it all. You know, a story guiding us through the whole thing, and a strong theme, both musically and in terms of style and conceptually, the image that it puts in your mind, and not forgetting also the visual aspects provided by the movie as well. Not to say that every album needs a kind of story or something linear keeping it together, but that makes it way more engaging, plain and simple. Every tune here has something memorable or catchy to it, the right amount of them as well, at 12, you know, not too many, not too few, and there's a range of genres here, from big room techno to jungle terror, Jersey club, bits of dubstep, and all told through this dystopian, rave-like primal lens, and a depth and richness to the production that goes well beyond just sounding good and actually transports you to that world, if you get me. You know, painting a picture of disruption and chaos, yet ultimately a world that can be healed and have the brightest future imaginable, which is obviously very relatable to our current and actual situation. So it invites you to identify with it. An array of big statement-making bangers here as well, launching it forward with the rest supporting it effectively. It isn't perfect, however, that being said, I don't think it's massively far from that. Only a couple here that don't add loads, but even they kind of embellish the story of the LP really well. And it just has this gargantuan, larger-than-life feel that I find very difficult to pull myself away from, and I think many others do too. And beyond that, just a lot of fun, got that flavour to make you want to go back to it again and again. And yeah, all that being said, my definite number 1 of 2020. But there we have it, my top 20 bass albums of 2020, the third video of Yearly Favourites Week 2020. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, for tuning in. But now the fun part, be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on my list, but also with your favourite bass albums of 2020, which ones did I miss out in your opinion? And again, what did you make of my list? Drop all of your views, thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. Just to let you know, earlier on in the week we had the best remixes and EPs of the year, and if you haven't checked them out yet, then I will link them right here. And we also have to come the best singles of 2020. That will come out on Sunday, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell along the way if you want to be locked in for all of that. You definitely will be. But yeah, beyond that, keep it naughty. If it's naughty, then you know. And I shall see you all in the next one, my top 50 singles. 50 of 2020 coming out on Sunday. Peace.